There's something interesting about the way most of us learned about life. We spent years in classrooms studying subjects like mathematics, literature, and science. We memorized formulas, wrote essays, and prepared for exams that felt incredibly important at the time. But when it comes to one of the most important parts of adult life, money, many people graduate without ever receiving a real education about it. And that absence quietly shapes the way people live. Let me tell you about someone I once observed closely. He did everything the way society told him to do it. He studied hard. He earned good grades. He went to university. And eventually he found a stable job. On paper, everything looked like success, but a few years later, something strange started happening. Even though his income was decent, he constantly felt financially behind. He wasn't reckless with money. He wasn't irresponsible. Yet every month seemed to feel tight. At first, he thought the problem was income. Maybe he just needed to earn more. But as his salary slowly increased over time, the feeling didn't completely disappear. That's when he started realizing something uncomfortable. The problem wasn't just how much money he earned. It was how little he understood about how money actually works, because there are several lessons about money that most schools never teach. And these lessons quietly shape the financial lives of millions of people. The first lesson is something many people only discover after they begin working. Income alone does not create financial stability. When people imagine wealth, they often imagine a higher salary, a promotion, a bigger paycheck. But what many people eventually realize is that income and financial stability are not the same thing. When income increases, something else often increases as well. Lifestyle, a slightly nicer apartment, more convenient purchases, more dinners out, a few extra subscriptions. None of these decisions feel extreme, each one feels reasonable on its own, but together they slowly absorb the extra income. This phenomenon is often called lifestyle inflation, and it quietly explains why many people feel financially stuck, even as their earnings grow. The second lesson school rarely teaches is about comparison. Money is rarely experienced in isolation. People naturally measure their financial progress against the lives around them. Friends buying homes, colleagues upgrading cars, social media showing vacations, luxury restaurants, and carefully curated lifestyles. Over time, this creates something subtle but powerful. A new definition of what normal looks like. What once felt like success begins to feel average, and average rarely feels satisfying. The truth is that comparison is one of the most expensive financial habits a person can develop. Not because it forces people to spend immediately, but because it quietly shifts expectations. The third lesson school rarely teaches is about financial behavior. Many people believe financial success is mostly about intelligence, but in reality, it's often about habits, small, repeated behaviors that compound over time. Saving a portion of income regularly, avoiding unnecessary debt, allowing investments to grow patiently over many years. None of these habits look dramatic in the short term. In fact, they often look slow, sometimes even boring. But time transforms small habits into powerful outcomes. And that's something traditional education rarely emphasizes. The fourth lesson school rarely teaches is about psychology. Money is not purely mathematical, it is emotional. People often spend when they are stressed, or when they feel pressure to belong, or when they want to reward themselves after a difficult day. These decisions are rarely calculated. They are emotional reactions to situations that feel uncomfortable in the moment. Understanding this emotional side of money can completely change the way people think about spending, because when people recognize the emotional triggers behind financial decisions, they begin to see patterns that previously felt random. And once those patterns become visible, they become easier to change. The fifth lesson school rarely teaches might be the most important. Financial security grows quietly. When people imagine wealth, they often imagine something dramatic. A sudden breakthrough, a major opportunity, a large windfall. But most financial stability is not created that way. Instead, it grows through something much quieter: consistency, small gaps between income and spending, steady saving, long-term investing, allowing compound growth to work slowly over time. At first, the progress feels almost invisible, but over many years, those small decisions begin to accumulate, and eventually they create something powerful. Flexibility. Flexibility means fewer financial emergencies. It means the ability to handle unexpected challenges, and it means decisions can be made calmly rather than under pressure. The person I mentioned earlier eventually discovered these lessons not through school, but through experience, through mistakes, through curiosity, and through slowly observing how money behaves over time. What he realized changed the way he approached finances. Instead of focusing only on earning more, he began focusing on understanding money better. Instead of expanding his lifestyle immediately, he began strengthening his financial foundation. Instead of comparing his progress to others, he began measuring progress against his own past. And slowly, the pressure began to fade, not overnight, but gradually. Because financial understanding often changes something deeper than numbers, it changes perspective. Money stops feeling like a constant source of anxiety and begins to feel more like a tool that, when used intentionally, can support a stable and meaningful life. The reality is that most people are not struggling financially because they are incapable. They are struggling because they were never taught the quiet rules of money, rules about habits, rules about psychology, rules about time. Once those rules become clear, something shifts. Financial decisions begin to feel less confusing, less reactive, and more deliberate. And perhaps the most reassuring part of all is this: it is never too late to learn the lessons that school never taught, because financial progress rarely depends on a perfect starting point. It depends on understanding, and understanding, once gained, has a way of changing everything that follows.